Hi, Shivangi ma'am.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, great. So let me also introduce you to Abhinav sir.
Yeah.
Abhinav
Hello.
sir is the head of the SAT and paper, SAT and paper, and they are providing all the tutoring sessions in the full-fledged program. And Abhinav sir, Shivangi ma'am is the career counselor at Ahmedabad International School, and
Hello.
she's going to talk with the students towards the end of the sessions, final 10 minutes, where she'll share her advice.
Certainly.
Yeah?
So I'll try to wind up by 2:30, so then she can take over. 3:30, then she can take over.
Great, great. So we still have a couple of minutes, so I'll just put myself on hold and on mute, and then I'll quickly begin the session, and I'll hand it over to you, Abhinav sir. Yeah.
Certainly. All right. Okay.
So I have to start at 2:30.
At 3:30, yes, at 3:30.
Roughly.
And I have to talk between SAT and ACT, right?
You have to talk about the topics that we discussed, right?
Yeah. So because your link says ACT, but earlier we talked about difference.
Yes, right. So you can talk about both things. That include both SAT and ACT when you are speaking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Okay.
So I'll put myself on mute as well as video off.
Yes. That's perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's 3 o'clock. We are ready to start. So again, a very warm welcome to all of you. And straight away, let me hand over the session to Abhinav sir, where he'll talk us through the ACT exam. Abhinav sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Devesh. All right, so we pick up from where we left off in the last session. I hope all of you found that to be informative. So talking about the ACT was established in 1959. So that's a good 33 years after the SAT came into existence. We had another test called the ACT. American college testing is how it expands. And this is based out of Iowa, which is a small interior state in the US. And as of now, if I talk about in 2018, the number of test takers was about 1.9 million or 19 lakhs, so which is marginally lower as compared to SAT. But if you look at the history, both SAT and ACT, have remained neck and neck in terms of the number of students taking these tests. So what's the big change on the ACT? The big change on ACT happened in September of 2018 when they decided to go digital. So the ACT today is an online test. That means it is taken off a computer screen. That does not mean that you can take it from home. No, you have to visit a center, register for the test, and under supervision, you take this test on a computer screen, which is a very, very simple format. So very, very user-friendly format is what we have. Those of you who will be taking a diagnostic test or a scholarship test with us later would get to do an ACT in an environment which is identical to what you'll get to see on the test date. So we have an exact clone of the ACT testing environment in terms of our own software at Satin Paper. When is it offered? ACT internationally is offered 7 times in a year. So these months are February, April, June, July, September, October, and December. This year, of course, the February test has been cancelled. So there is no ACT in February. The remaining 6 are in place. And most of these ACTs would happen towards the middle of the year. So more often than not, it's going to be the second Friday and Saturday of the month. Unlike the SAT, which has happened in only 1 iteration, for every administration, ACT has 4 options. Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. So if we count them all in, this test is actually offered 28 times in a year internationally. You got wider variety here as compared to SAT in terms of test choices. The other difference here is, whereas the SAT scores would typically take at least 2 weeks to be released, ACT scores are usually released within 3 working days. Of course, there are some exceptions to this at times, but normally if you take a test on Saturday, you'll have the results in your mailbox by Wednesday morning. It is that quick, and that is an advantage coming out of the fact that it is computer-based. Where can you take the test? Most major cities in India would have centers. Again, bigger cities like Delhi and Mumbai would have multiple centers. You can visit act.org to find out, where you have a center, where you do not have a center. But they've really worked very, very hard, on making this test more widely available across the nation, especially over the last 2 years. You see a lot of effort going in on part of the ACT. Well, coming down to how the test is scored. Now, the scoring here is in a way similar, in a way different than the SAT. So again, you have scale scores in place. ACT is scored on a scale of 36. So the perfect score here would be a 36. It's again a scale score, not a raw score, right? So what you target to score is a 36 on 36 would be a perfect score to get over here. Just to share with you, in the recent years, over 15 of our students have got this perfect score. In fact, in 2020 alone, we had 7 of our students at Satin Paper getting a perfect score of 36 on the ACT. Right, so I'll come down to the sections later, but okay, we can just briefly touch it here. There are 4 sections here: English, math, reading, and science. And your score on each of these 4 sections would be calculated on a scale of 36. And then we take a simple average of these 4 scores to arrive at what we call as your composite score. Goes without saying that this composite score can be fractional, and that is something which is made to work to the student's advantage always. If you have a 32.5 or higher, sorry, it will be rounded off to a 33. But if you had a 32.25, it will be rounded off to a 32 only. Just give me one moment, please. So in addition to these 4 areas, you have the optional essay, just like the SAT, and which is scored on a scale of 12 now. So your essay scores would be reported out of 12. So unlike the SAT, where the starting range is 200 to 400 or 200 to 800 or 400 to 1600, on ACT, the starting number is 1 only. So the ranges would work out as anywhere from 1 to 36. In terms of the test duration, the ACT is 5 minutes shorter than the SAT if you do not count the break time, or you do not count the essay. So I'll just give you a glimpse of what this looks like. Section 1 here is always English. You have 75 questions to be done in 45 minutes. Section 2 is math. 60 questions to be done in 60 minutes. And since we have only one math section, not two like the SAT, the calculator is permitted throughout. So those of you who are shy of calculations orally, maybe SAT might be the place to look at, because you can use a calculator throughout the math section. The third section is reading. 40 questions to be done in 35 minutes. There's a 10-minute break between section 2 and section 3, which is also the only break available on the ACT, unlike the SAT, which has got 2 breaks. Section 4 is science. Again, 40 questions and 35 minutes, right? Most of these questions have got 4 options each, except for the math section, where the questions are going to have 5 options each and not 4. So this is how the ACT broadly looks like. And then of course we have a small break again. And then your item number 5 is the essay, which is optional. And the time allotted to essay, is a single task, is about 40 minutes. Right? So that's what the ACT looks like. Structurally, it's a simple test. I'll not be comparing the SAT and ACT in this section. We have another session planned later for that, where we'll pick it up section by section, bit by bit, piece by piece, and we'll take a look at how the two of them compare. Globally, they serve the same purpose. So majority of the colleges, almost all of the colleges which accept the SAT would also be accepting the ACT. The College Board and the ACT also jointly publish an equivalence table, with the help of which you can convert one of these scores to the other very easily. And if you Google around SAT, ACT concordance, you'll be able to find out these tables very easily without having much of a problem in any case. Like the SAT, on the ACT also, there is no negative marking, so there is no penalty for guessing. You should never leave questions unattempted on a test like this, because whether you get it incorrect or you do not attempt it, you're going to get a 0 in both cases. So guessing doesn't harm you. Of course, you should try and solve the questions on merit. That's the first priority. But what if you cannot do it for want of time or something like that? We do not leave questions unattempted out here. Okay, fair enough. So with that very quick introduction, I think I want to reserve more time for the Q&A today for this particular session. Let me quickly go into the various sections and their details and what they look like. So the English section, which is 75 questions in 45 minutes, it is much like the writing section on the SAT. And these 75 questions will usually be divided into 5 passages, each of them having 15 questions each. Whereas this looks like a lot of questions to be answered in 45 minutes. Beyond the first or 2 practice papers, it is unlikely that you're going to struggle with time on the English section. So most of you will be able to finish it well on time. Again, questions are either grammar or punctuation or rhetoric, or as they are in case of the SAT, right? So there's no difference here whatsoever. Second, math. 60 questions and 60 minutes. 2 facts that you need to know. The first one, you're permitted to use a graphing calculator throughout this test. And guys, if you're taking an ACT, Please make sure that you equip yourselves with a graphing calculator and you're well versed about how to use it. A graphing calculator here could make a lot of difference to your life. Second, these questions are arranged usually in ascending order of difficulty, which means the first 30-35 questions here would usually be very simple. Question number 35 to 50 would have a moderate level of difficulty, and the tougher ones would be placed towards the end. Be alive to this situation so that you can manage your time accordingly. If you linearly divide your time over the entire math section, then that's going to be a problem, because you will suddenly find a time crunch operating against you towards the end of the section. In terms of scope, the ACT is wider than the SAT, although it is more curricular. So what you get to see on the test would be closer to what you study in grade 10, 11, and 12 at your 10, 11 primarily at your school. Has got part doses of higher math as well. It has algebra. It has a heavy dose of geometry. On the SAT and the new SAT, geometry is just about 2-3 questions. But on the ACT, something like 15 questions out of these 60 could be pure plain geometry, nothing else. Then you have some trigonometry also here. I mean, this is a very, very wide array of questions that they can ask you for on the ACT math, right? Unlike the SAT math, which tends to have a very small syllabus, right? So calculator and scope. But that given, the questions on ACT are usually direct, usually very, very direct. So they'll, I mean, if you know the concept related to a particular question, there's a very minor probability that you'll make a mistake on it or that you'll not be able to solve a question given that you knew the underlying concept. So that doesn't often happen here. The third section here is reading. 40 questions, 35 minutes. These are divided into 4 sections. Sorry, what am I writing? 4 passages, and each of these passages is going to have 10 questions, right? One of these passages would be literature. One of these passages is going to be science. One of these passages is going to be social science. And one of these passages is going to be humanities. That's how they classify it. And they appear in a fixed order. I mean, I don't have it with me right now. Which one comes? I think literature comes first. And I think science comes last. I'll have to check it up. I've not looked into it. But the order, which of these passages you're going to have, the first and second and third and fourth, is fixed and is never changes. The questions here again would be simpler, just that you don't have much time with you, because 35 minutes and 4 passages, you are wanting to average about 8.5 minutes to the passage. And it's a pretty long passage, right? It's not a short passage. So even if you read it, I mean, at a normal speed, not a quick speed, it will normally take you 3 to 4 minutes to just read the passage, which means to answer the 10 questions, I might be left with 4.5 minutes only. So those of you who are speed readers, who are quick to read, would have a definite advantage here. Those of you who are in grades 8, grade 9, grade 10, and looking at taking these exams later on, they'll have to start working on their reading speed up early. And the only way to work on your reading speed is to actually read a lot. So start reading early, guys. I mean, you'll be benefiting a lot. When I see students in grade 12 struggling with their reading speed on the SAT or the ACT, and please know at this stage, when you've got so much on your plate, it's a little difficult to do a lot of reading to improve your reading speed. It doesn't happen. But if you're younger still, you can grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, please make sure that you add at least 45 minutes of reading every day to your daily task, and do that without fail. Okay, moving on. Beyond that, the questions here would be simpler. I mean, they would not be very complicated. So they would be simple questions, which you'll be able to answer. Speed is the primary challenge on the ACT reading. The 4th section is called as science, and this has got too many myths associated with it. It will take me some time to debunk those. 40 questions in 35 minutes. And these 40 questions are usually divided into 6 to 7 passages. And each of these passages can have 5 to 7 questions, right? The first thing that boys and girls you need to understand is that the ACT test of science is not a test of science. No, it is not. It's actually a test of data comprehension. Just like we have reading comprehension, where you start with printed text, sentences, and you try to figure out the meaning of these sentences, what they mean. On the science section, you start with a set of data. And you try to comprehend that data in a specific manner. It's a fun section. It's a good section. Why do they call it science? Because this test on data comprehension is set in an environment of science. They'll rarely be testing you for principles of science, right? Usually it is your ability to comprehend data or to read data quickly and scientifically that is being tested here. Still, since it is set in an environment of science, you'll need to be well versed with very basics, crude basics of science. So normally say, if you've done all 3 sciences till grade 10, that is good enough a qualification for you to pick up the ACT. You do not need any sciences here from grade 11 or grade 12. That's for sure. Yes, you should. And even if you are not very good with your grade 10 science, it doesn't matter. Even if you used to hate science in grade 10, it doesn't matter. All that we're looking at is some kind of a basic awareness, to some kind of science principles. You should know what the structure of cell is. You should know how kinetic energy is different from potential energy. You should know how a pH of 9 is different from a pH of 5 and stuff like that. Yes, and this is also a speed test. You'll need to work your way very quickly through these questions, and time would tend to run out faster, much faster than you imagine. The other myth that I've come across is that if you are doing a STEM program, you must do the ACT because it has a science section. No, the 2 tests are equivalent. So I'll again address this one later in my next section. But it's not that. It is not contingent on what you would be doing for your college. The 2 tests are equivalent, as in they're equivalent. So even if you're a humanities student wanting to do a humanities program, you can still do the ACT, no problem at all. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily do the ACT. No, absolutely not. So it's about figuring out what is a test that you are better equipped at, that you're better suited to, which is something we discuss a little later. Coming down to the essay on the ACT, you have only 1 task. You're given 40 minutes to solve it. And the only difference is the essay has to be typewritten here. You have to type it out on a computer keyboard, unlike the SAT where you got to write it in pencil. And it's scored out of 12. The passage here is much shorter than what is there on the SAT. So we'll discuss the essay again later in a separate session later in the prep festival. So I think that's about what I had to comment on. It came in the backdrop of the SAT session, so a lot of things I did not have to repeat. Any questions I'll be glad to take up later. I think we have Ms. Angie Panchal waiting to address the students, so I would request Devesh to invite her.
Yes. So first of all, thank you so much, Abhinav sir, for sharing the information on ACT. With that, let me invite Ms. Shivangi Panchal, who is the career counselor at Ahmedabad International School. His years of experience helping hundreds of students during their college application journey. An amazing counselor, a superb person. So welcome, ma'am, and please do share with us your advice with the students on their SAT and ACT prep.
Thank you, Devesh. And I think after Abhinav sir's very explicit detailing of the difference, there is very little that I can add because that was an excellent, very articulated one. I just like to put in a few more tips here that just like he said, there are so many times that ACT happens and SAT happens. Only one thing that adds to the STEM programs, if you're looking at for going abroad, is the subject SATs. So that is something that is different, which you have to have differently when you're taking it. It is always the SAT or the ACT, but subject SAT is, there is no option if you have to, appear for the exam.
We seem to have a Wi-Fi disruption at her, and I think she should be back here
Yes, yes,
shortly. We can wait.
yes.
That's okay.
The
Guys, you
SAT
can.
and a subject SAT can happen. Yeah, so that is one thing. Another thing that I would, I mean, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So one other thing that I would like to advise is that finish all your testing. As a counselor, I feel finish all your testing by end of grade 11. The timeline is very, very important, because then you have a tsunami. If you're doing an IB, or if you're doing the A levels, or even the boards, even the CBSE or ICSE, any of the boards, it is very important for you to get good scores in your mid years and your finals. So till October of your senior year is the time when you need to wind up all your testing, be it SAT, be it ACT, be it your subject SATs, your TOEFL, IELTS, everything else. You need to complete everything and put it aside before you begin your senior year or grade 12, I would say. That is most important. Otherwise, I have had students who come in and they are like not able to manage anything. I don't have, then they start bunking school classes because you're appearing for the ACT and SAT. Now, another thing, as a test center, I'm also a test center for ACT, I'm a test center for SAT also. So, one very basic information I would like to share with all the students is that please be very, very careful of the tickets that you're carrying. Your admission ticket has to be you have to read it. Most often, you don't read the admission ticket. So, sometimes it happens that they have come with a TOEFL ticket for a SAT exam. They have come either with the subject SAT, when it is only the SAT and not subject SAT is not going to be taken that day. Be careful whether you are waitlisted or you are registered already. So you should be aware of what you have in your hand before you come to the center. Always carry pencils. Don't even dream of putting a pen for a SAT exam. Of course, for the ACT, it is all computerized, but even there, I have seen that, they walk in that, oh, it's an 8 o'clock time. They walk in at 8 o'clock. No, you have to be there. It's said over there that you need to be there half an hour before. So be on time so that your place is taken, all the details are filled in, because all the personal information that is required, or your punching in of the tickets and everything that is required, takes away such a lot of time that you're always in a rush. So you need to calm down when you are appearing for the exam. You don't need to be very hyper on these basic formalities, which is no big deal as such, but you just have to pay a little more attention to it. So for the SAT, please carry your watch, carry calculator, batteries, because I mean, we have this, suddenly you will have at least two students in the class who will say, ma'am, my calculator is not working. Why? Because I think the batteries run out. So if it is charged or it requires batteries, please make sure that that is done before. You should not wait for that last minute. Your watch, because in case the school watch or the center watch is not working, so that you need a proper watch for that. So that has to be done. Um, and be alert when you're coming to the center, and not just casually eat something and come. So you don't it's a 3-hour exam, so you're not hungry. Carry some snacks, and by snacks you could carry chocolates maybe, which is less messier and easier to eat. But yes, and both the tests are equally important, equally well weighted by all universities across the globe. And even if you do the UCAS, you can select ACT over there, you can select SAT over there. So even though it's not a requirement, but when you put it along with your marks, it makes a lot of difference. So I would suggest that yes, that really is helpful that you take both the exams. And if you're good, like sir said, that it's science section, so if you have that little knack towards science and you feel that, oh, that part is not coming, I'm a little sad on the English but I'm better on the science, then give one shot to ACT and one shot to SAT. You can always juggle around the scores and see. But more or less I have seen that if somebody has got a score of say 1300 or something, the equivalent is almost there at ACT. It's not something starkly different. But yes, you can give it a call. So children, you need to really calm down when you're going to the test center and not be hyper and running, flapping your passport and your Aadhaar card or whatever. Suddenly so many times you've forgotten the Aadhaar card or the passport. In India, both are allowed now. So, but you've forgotten both. So I don't know how you go for an international exam and you forget all these important things. So please remember all those things. Timeline is very important. Complete all your testing in your year 11. I would say year 10, you can give one shot after your PSAT, give a PSAT and then, give one try of the SAT if possible. And yeah, try to complete everything by October of the senior year.
Superb. So one quick clarification. Uh, for SAT and ECT, both passport and Aadhaar card will work as a valid identification proof. And will a school ID card work?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't, because there are many older kids also coming. So it's very clearly written on the ticket. There was a time once that there was, I think, one year, about 2 years back, they had allowed the school ID card. That time when the Aadhaar card was not allowed. So now with the Aadhaar card there, everything is Aadhaar card or the passport.
Okay, wonderful, superb. So
carry the originals. Please don't carry Xerox copies or notarized copies, and valid passport. If you're carrying a passport which is not valid, and say that I'm carrying a slip of the passport office which says, oh, it has gone for renewal, that's not going to work.
Oh, okay. I think that's a very important point, because a lot of the students, while registering, they need to take care of the fact that their passport is valid till the date. I think that's something very important.
Even Aadhaar card, don't your homemade card or a printout won't do. You need the original Aadhaar card. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your advice, for sharing test center advice, a very valuable information, really practical knowledge, which only a test center head, a test center coordinator or supervisor can share with the students. So let me get back to you with any specific questions that the students have for you. Yes. And meanwhile, let me move back to Abhinav sir, and let me start sharing the SAT, ACT related questions with you, sir. So the first question is like this: do any stream students can take ACT, or is it only?
Yes, it is open to everyone.
Okay.
The ACT does not place, or the SAT does not place any limitations on who can take this test.
Okay.
It's for you to decide what test are you better suited at.
Okay. And a lot of students are asking, and I can see that you already answered it, can we take both SAT and ACT exam?
You can take both. There is no harm done, but there is nothing to be gained, because end of the day, you got to report only one of them. Okay. But at times what happens, some of the students try the SAT, it doesn't work out for them. Then they switch to the ACT, which is valid, because their objective is to get the highest possible score. But another way to look at it, is to do a diagnostic before you start preparing. So rather than discovering that later, I should do a diagnostic upfront and figure out which one am I better suited at. Also, when you do a diagnostic for both the tests, it will give you exposure to both tests, and then you'll be able to formulate an opinion of your own, right? So what we're doing as a part of the scholarship test here would be, a diagnostic test, a full SAT and a full ACT. That's an excellent opportunity for all students to take this test, authentic test, actual test with us, which is something we'll be unfurling at 5 o'clock today as to how you can participate. And of course, I mean, if you're good, if you score well, you could end up earning, a 100% fee waiver on the prep programs as well.
Superb.
Which is as much as 1,50,000.
Yes, yes.
So we'll be giving away some 25.5 lakh rupees in confirmed scholarships through the Next Genius Test Prep Scholarship Program.
Okay, so the next question is there any way to get a fee waiver for ACT?
Yes, you can get a fee waiver for ACT. If your school counselor thinks that you cannot afford to pay the fee for this test, she can forward, a request to the ACT, and if they approve it. But again, fee waivers for either the SAT or the ACT for international students is a rare occurring. It's not the norm. Am I right? I think Mrs. Panchal would be able to answer that question much better because she is the one who handles it much more often.
Yeah, I agree with you, sir, that I don't encourage that, because I feel that if you are not able to spend for the test, then what we are talking of spending crores or outside. So
Okay.
most often I'm not convinced on that fee waiver. So if I'm not convinced, then I don't go ahead with it. I tell them that let's look at other options, or let's look at colleges that don't require any of these things. Because on one hand, we are talking of an $80,000 university, and on the other hand, we are not able to afford the exam fees. Similarly, when I start my counseling session also, I tell them very clearly that even your applications, even if you're choosing 10 universities to apply, is going to cost you about 1.5 lakh, because sending the test scores across, sending the TOEFLs across, doing $80 application fee, that's going to be $100.
Okay.
I think it's stuck.
So I somehow feel that I'm not convinced. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely great. Okay. Another question on ACT here is I have someone from a commerce field, someone who has taken commerce at school. How would they manage the science part if they decide to take?
Okay,
ACT?
so somebody who's taken commerce should take the ACT only if they have studied all 3 sciences till grade 10. If you have not studied all 3 sciences till grade 10, my advice is please don't take the ACT. You'll struggle.
Okay.
But it will not require any sciences from grade 11.
Okay.
Even if you have studied any coordinated sciences or integrated sciences in grade 10, which were just known by the name science, that's it. No physics, no chemistry, no biology in there. Even then it's okay. You don't need any sciences in grade 11.
Okay. Now this question is something where both of you can add your responses. Is there a particular test which adds more value to your profile? Like is SAT more valuable, ACT more valuable?
I'll let ma'am answer that. I think she's far
No, sir.
better position to answer this one. This is not in my domain, honestly.
More value to other than ACT or SAT? No, your school grades.
Between SAT and ACT.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Both are the same. Both are the same. Absolutely. There is no difference. I mean, it's just the super scoring that the children are all running after. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter, and if they feel that even the super score, okay, let me try. Because I have many in the school also, and across in my times that they have taken about the SAT 3 times, and twice they've taken the ACT. More or less, I said it's the same score that they get. And just to feel and try their luck at different scores, but not at all. Nobody looks and views it differently. Yeah, am I right, sir? Abhinav, sir?
Absolutely perfect. The 2 tests are completely equivalent. And ma'am, when your students don't get the scores, send them to us. We'll get them a score. Don't worry.
Sure. No, I have an issue that children get a 1580 on SAT and don't get admission in universities. That is my problem.
Because they don't work on the other aspects, right? So SAT score is not the only thing.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, how many times can a student take the test? Is there any
Correct answer is as many times as you feel like, but when that's the technically correct answer. But that won't help you because scores won't keep on increasing. So the idea is prepare yourselves well, do the test once, and if you don't hit your target score, I think do it once more. I think that's about it. There's no point doing it a third time. The scores won't improve. They'll stay where they are. It's an aptitude test. This is not a school-like or content-driven test. So again, watch out for this space more often for next week, where we'll be able to talk about these things in much greater detail.
Okay. Is ACT a paper-based test or a computer-based?
No, ACT is a computer-based test. SAT is a paper-based test.
Okay. And is it a computer adaptive test? Like, is the level?
No, it is not a computer adaptive test like the GRE or GMAT. In case of a GMAT or GRE, your next question depends upon your answer to the current question, and different people taking the test might get different questions. On the ACT, everybody taking the same test on the same day will get the same questions on the same order. So it has not changed. I mean, what it used to be as a paper-based test earlier, that stays. Just the interface has changed. I think that's about it.
Okay. So for the students who are asking how to register for the SAT ACT, we are hosting sessions this evening at 5 p.m.
At 6 p.m. and 6:30. Yeah, 6 and 6:30.
Where we'll actually take you through the SAT and ACT registration process, so you can actually go through the whole registration along with us while you are live on the webinar, right? And one more question is, what is the cost of ACT? Again, I think
ACT $150 without the essay, $165 with the essay. So it's slightly more expensive than the SAT to take the ACT.
Okay, great. Someone is asking again, are there SAT and ACT centers in Hyderabad? I'm sure there are.
There are for both of them. Just go to the respective websites and you will be able to find out. Any further questions, if anybody has, you can always shoot a question to my email ID I shared in the previous one. I'll not write it again. Or you could visit our website or leave a message over there. We'll be glad to answer any student-specific questions. Any more that you have, Devesh sir, please go ahead.
Sure. So I think we have the questions are pretty much repeated right now, or they're not really relevant to this session. So we'll leave it for future sessions. And before we close for the day, any final word of advice from both of you, from Shivangi ma'am, from Abhinav sir? So maybe let's start with Shivangi ma'am. Any final word of advice to these students, these grade 10 and 11 students who are preparing, who are thinking of taking the test in the next few months?
No, I think you should just be very calm and don't have any, don't make it the be all and end all of everything. There are lots of other pieces to your application. SAT, ACT is just one part of it. So yes, we need to, just like your grades, your school grades are important, good grades. What are they looking at? Consistency. So keep everything consistent. If you have got say in an IB, a 42 on a 45, and you have got a 1300 in your SAT or a 30 in your ACT, obviously it's not matching. Somewhere something is going wrong. So they're going to put everything on a graph and see whether that's all matching. So don't panic too much, and be calm, and don't make it so stressful as they do, especially Indian children. So
Definitely.
all the best to you.
Start early and read a lot. Just two things. Take my advice. Read a lot. End of the day, an average Indian student will not do well at any of these if you're not reading a lot. Read a lot, guys. Take that 45-minute every day reading challenge. You'll come out in flying colors. I can promise you as much. And start early. Start early. The latest where your SAT or ACT prep can begin is the last day of your grade 10. I've given you a very simple, so try to finish it off within the first 6 months of your grade 11, because beyond that, as you get into your school, it's going to get a lot more murkier.
I totally agree. Yes.
Superb. Wonderful. You. So thank you so much. Thank you, Shivangi ma'am, for sharing your advice with all the students today. It was really a pleasure having such an experienced counselor like yourself join us for this session.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Abhinav sir. Very nice meeting you.
Thank you, Abhinav sir, again, and we are looking forward to the next session, which is going to be one of the most interesting sessions.
And the standard advice to students: do not miss the next one, please. Yes. And get all your students friends to attend it. Take live notes in the next session. This is going to be very, very helpful. It will save you a lot of botheration later on. That's what I can promise you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. See you in the next 20 minutes. Okay. Thank you, Devesh. Thank you so much.